particularly rushed situation. So if anybody says, wow, 2015, it means nothing.
What did we originally tell people that we would be, wouldn't we tell people we'd be selecting an architect in 2014?
Yes, that was the goal, yes.
Right.
I agree with what Rose said. I think that, as I talk to people, everybody's concerned, right? The number one concern is, are you really gonna do it this time? That's the number one concern.
Right.
The number two concern is, can you really raise the money to do it? And I think that if people feel like it's really being taken seriously, which I think it is, this is an extremely serious committee. I don't think it matters whether it's December or January that we make that selection. You're right, I think the message did go out that we were going to target selecting an architect in 2014, and we were going to break ground in 2015. And I think that if that slips a little bit, and it's because this committee has handled it in such a serious fashion that we're getting the best that we can get. I mean, this building has some potential to get some real focus and coverage. I think it can be groundbreaking. I personally am not upset by the idea of it slipping, and believe me, I want to make it happen as quickly as possible. I'm very focused on it, but I think if we get the right people, and we know they have the qualifications, we know that they can produce a facility that we can really be proud of, that we're going to feel really good about it.
Yeah, and I certainly support that. That wasn't my point at all. It was just that, is there any way to do, for instance, the RFP and the RFQ at the same time?
Well, maybe the city can, they can start working on it.
Yeah,
I think this committee's gonna wanna spend time.
We need to start working on it, then. We've got to go back to our subcommittees
You see,
again.
I'm not sure that we do need to do that. I think that verifying what the actual scope of work is down to the last square foot of space,
Mhm.
I think that's kind of the work of the architect that we're going to select. I don't think we have to, with our limited ability, I don't think we can tell them exactly what the program is.
Well, we need to read it, no, we need, I take issue with that. We know what the program is. We need to know what the head count is, we need to know what the future head count will be. I don't think this is information that the consultants know about. We know about what the philosophy of the common spaces are. They don't know that we want to share X number of conference rooms, we need to hone in on that and make sure that we've got those numbers correct before we hand that information over to them. And there's still the issue of the multi-purpose room. Where is it? Who does it serve? Common lobbies. They can tell us typically, this is what you do, but is that what we need or want at this point? That's what I mean. I'm not talking about every square inch. It's just looking at it.
Well, what I think this committee's role is, and I think what would harm the sentiment, are we actually gonna do it this time, is if this committee gets too far down into the weeds and it gets lost. You need to, keep the perspective up, do we need those common areas? What are they gonna be used for? Do we wanna rehab this building? What is that kind of scope of work? But, what size office? Do we need 3 offices versus 2? You shouldn't be in those areas of what's going on.
And I think that the point is that although that information certainly needs to be drawn out during the design process, I'm not sure that it makes that much difference to the scope of work that the architect is building their proposal on. They're going to put together a proposal that'll be, very substantial. And I think whether we have 2,500 square feet of administrative space or 2,700 square feet of administrative space makes absolutely no difference to them. I think rehabbing this building makes a lot of difference, but we're going to address that as an add-on anyhow. So, I don't know. I'm just trying to think if there is a way, without doing things so quick that we mess things up, is there a way to speed things up and still keep a high-quality process going?
Try to consolidate some things where we
Are there
can.
any things that we can consolidate?
And then you're
We
talking-
talked about RFQ and RFP. Are there any other things that we could consolidate to maybe save some time, given the nature of a project like this is that you have to wait until the council approves certain stages?
So if I'm hearing everybody right, it sounds like consolidate where we can without giving up on the quality of the project.
Right.
We're cutting corners.
Yeah.
The RFP's gotta be more conceptual than detailed. And then, I know Rick said last month, the other thing I think that comes into play here is, from an outreach standpoint, making sure that, as you said, we don't get bogged down in details to the point where people think nothing's happening. We have to make sure that people are informed that we are moving forward, even if we have a slip and maybe we're delayed a month or something like that, in favor of being a little more detailed and quality intensive. The public's got to think, hey, this thing is happening. We have to look more dynamic to the public, I believe.
Yeah.
The public will know that, though, through a lot of the actions and of the activities of the fundraising committee as well. Once we're out of our quiet phase, they'll know.
How with the quiet.
Yeah, that's what we're calling it.
If I may offer, one of the things that the committee did previously, which you may want to consider the next time, you met outside of your normal second Monday in order to interview the architects.
Mhm.
That may be something, just because of the, I wouldn't call it necessarily mutable, but certainly his scheduled regular council meeting dates and backing up, as the city manager said, for the city attorney's review and writing the staff report and his review. There may be an opportunity, by having a special meeting, a week earlier or a week later or something like that, to capture, to accelerate things 2 or 3 weeks, because, it's like missing the bus. You miss that bus, you gotta wait the next half hour for the next one. We miss a council meeting, it's a month till the next one typically. So that may be an area, and you've done that before.
And, I look at this schedule still as sort of a rolling schedule, even what we say we committed to was so, such an initial pass of what we thought would be going on, that I can't imagine anybody would say that you promised us 2014, you would da-da-da, and therefore, you're a worthless bunch of people, So I think that, everything keeps rolling. The schedule is going to change slightly, but this is a working document for us to input and say, this is, we need more time, we need less time. And, I think as we move along, it will become a firmer schedule, though. Right now, we're still, at the phase where we're trying to get it started and we're trying to fit in everything we want. And we just don't know. We're doing the best we can. And I think it's pretty darn good. But now that we're getting feedback from funding and all of that, and, I see that it may be pushed out, but there's a reason. There's a good reason.
Should we kind of just end up considering the RFQ, RFP issue and then come back to the schedule and stuff later?
Yeah, who brought up the schedule?
I did.
Okay, Paul.
I only brought it up to get a point of clarification, and the only reason I brought it up was to clarify the difference between the two schedules on there. That's the only reason I even brought it up in the first place.
Okay.
So I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
let's go
I
back and
apologize
forth
for getting
again.
us sidetracked.
Yeah, well, that was relevant, so that's fine. Now we don't have to talk about the schedule as much. But I think maybe make a motion whether we want to go to the two-phase, the RFQ, unless you have more comments. Does anybody have more comments or concerns about this? I bought into the two-phase. I spoke to Gordon, but again, you guys didn't have the benefit of that conversation, so if anybody would like to make a motion.
I'll move that we recommend that the city council approve a two-phase RFQ, RFP process to select the Civic Center design team.
Second? Gordon, somebody?
I'll second.
Okay, so moved. We will go to the two-phase RFP, and bring that over to the council.
But the point of clarification, the RFQ will return to the CCAC at the September meeting for formal approval before it goes to the September council meeting.
Oh, that's right, there's no council meeting in August, so good.
So you get 30
Okay,
days or
good.
so
So this is what we asked for.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we asked for. Okay, so we will bring it back into the September meeting.
Is there a vote on that?
Yeah, do we all approve of that?
Aye?
Second, Mike?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so moved.
I'll give you a yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that makes sense now. Okay, that was the big one. Okay, staff report, selection of geotechnical consultant.
Well, we're down into the dirt now.
You were waiting for that, weren't you?
Thanks to Member Lively, who is not here, he reviewed all of the consultants. I think we had 6 proposals. He had a very detailed matrix down to the 10th of a point. I looked at them, I reviewed them, and actually concurred with them, so I took the top 4, and on advice of our city attorney, I looked at that short list, looked at their fees, and selected best value. And they at that point, because we do a qualification-based selection process by state law, which says you cannot use cost as the sole determinant, but you can consider cost. So once we had the firms that were essentially the same in terms of qualification, we looked at fee, and Murray Engineers came out significantly lower than the other firms. And for both, for the geotechnical work, some firms proposed some soil sampling, so I went back to them and I said, for this optional service, what would the fees be? They came back with a proposal, and I'm still negotiating a couple of points, but they're still literally thousands of dollars below what would have been the second low firm for a comparable scope of work. So I'm writing the agreement now and waiting for their final input from just a couple of minor points in terms of underground location and soil sampling. And that will go to the city manager. The council recently amended the city's purchasing capabilities, so the city manager has authority up to that limit, which is still a relatively modest limit still, but fortunately this proposal came in under that. I would point out all of the other proposals, and this was not the deciding factor, that they would have all had to go to council because they were over that limit. So it gives you an idea of the numbers. And last point, since the committee asked previously on, it's the fee proposed is under the amount budgeted in the cost estimate.
Yippee.
Yeah, like $11,000.
Yeah. So I would like to add, I want to, commend Bill Lively. I mean, he just goes above and beyond the call of duty. He just came off of our subcommittee to select a project manager. We went through, what, I can't remember now, but 8 or 10 binders in a weekend. He did it. And then he turned around and took on this task, even though he was going out of town. And I know he has a lot of other activities not going on in his life, and he did it without, any complaints. And it sounds like he did it very well. We've got to tip our hat off to him next time we see him.
Absolutely.
Real trooper, And his reward will be that we will put him on another. Anyway, so are we supposed to make a motion on this because we're,
It was information only.
Okay.
Then we have made the selection of the consultant, and we're in the final stages of negotiation. Which, by the way, it illustrates the point I made earlier, that sometimes you make a selection, and it's not like the next day they're ready to sign on the line. There's some issues there. I'm trying to negotiate the lowest possible fee, yet get the scope broad enough to incorporate things like, soil sampling to make sure we don't have what we call in the profession methyl death. No, having metals or diesel fuel, motor oil, those kinds of things. We want to find out, because the worst thing to happen is you start construction and then it's surprise, and then the contractors got their hand out looking for extended overhead and change orders, and that's how we get their cabin cruiser.
The change order boat.
Yeah.
I just looked at one of Steve's notes. I've got to bring this back up, because this is something this goes back to the SOQ. Why were we limited to 15 pages?
That's a suggestion. You'll get that, as the city mentioned, you'll get that back. If you want to increase that limit.
But we've never heard of it.
No, I had not before, and
No.
it's just that, I'll turn to these gentlemen also to get some
It distills the quality of information you get. Marketing people are verbose, they can go on and on and on. So it helps distill down what are the important, pieces of the proposal that we're trying to get across.
Okay.
So limiting, and it's not the resumes, it's just
right. It's the other material, you know, the nature of the firm, when were they incorporated, and where they've been, and then they'll give page after page of, you know, look at these wonderful things we've done.
Mhm.
A lot of that's on the websites nowadays too, so.
Which.
So you're saying the 15 pages is just, you know,
It's-
excludes resume,
Right.
excludes a lot of things.
Well, no, it would include everything in the SOQ but resumes.
But resume,
But
okay.
that's, you know, that's up to the committee. If you want to recommend a different limit, it's certainly your
Does
choice.
that make sense? I'm sorry to bring this back, but I just, you know, I wanted to cover everything that you.
But it will come back to you.
Oh, next time.
September for
Yeah,
that
we don't want, okay, so
specific
think
limit.
about it. This last recommendation was to limit the SOQ to 15 pages, and we've never done that before. You know, we've never limited it. And based on their recommendation, we can think about if you want to do that or not for the next meeting. Okay, I'm sorry, I just had to go back. We talked about
No
that
apologies
this
needed.
weekend too. So where are we? We are geotech.
And the next is a project update to the community.
Okay, that, I'm not. Okay.
All right, this is another receive and file information only item. As Paul mentioned a few minutes ago, it's important for the community to know what's going on and when things are happening. One of the obligations of the town is to do news flashes and website information and mailers and calendars and things to make sure people know when they can come to the CCAC meetings, what's going to be on the agenda, what's coming up next, when the council's going to approve things. We have an obligation to do that irrespective of what's going on in the quiet phase or active phase of Atherton now. And the messages and missions are separate and apart from each other. I had a teleconference with Steve Dustart and Dee Dee Fisher, the two members of the committee that aren't here. We talked about making sure that the mailer that we had proposed at the last meeting was delayed until, you know, later in September, just to make sure that Atherton now had some more time on the ground. And, you know, we're fine doing that, but we do want to continue to get that message out. So what we're suggesting is that, you know, as we consider big mailers to the community, like the postcard, we'll engage the outreach committee and say, hey, this is what we're proposing, this is when it's going to come out, what are your thoughts? The outreach subcommittee, and then we'll process those along the way. That's basically all this item is, information only, receive and file.
Good, yeah, I got the message from Steve, too. He was just concerned that you would not touch base with the fundraising and outreach and, you know.
Yeah.
But we got all these emails this weekend, and so I think you assured him that it would all be covered and you would touch base with one another. And,
So then, George, according to this, that the mailer released at the end of September, this final line, is that gonna be the next major mailer then?
That's going to be, what I'm envisioning is simply a postcard to
Like
go out
we
to the
did.
community going, hey, you know, this is where the Civic Center project is, here's the website, here's the next meeting, here's what the hot topics are, come and get engaged.
Similar to what we did with last year at this time,
Yep,
for all the meetings.
exactly.
Okay, good, so we're all happy that that's going to happen, and we're going to touch base with each other, and nobody will be mad, and probably will.
Can't promise that.
Yeah, I know, it's like, what happened this weekend? It's like, somebody's button was pushed. Anyway, okay, next item, so we don't need to make a motion or anything.
Nope.
Okay, sustainable building issues, discussion of timing and sustainable building issues.
Yeah, I didn't prepare a staff report. I just wanted to have the committee begin to think about this, that in the process where the consultant is going to be doing, or the design team is going to be doing their design, there's going to be certain milestones in terms of making decisions. Right now, it's wide open, you know, whatever the committee says, this is how we want the program to be. But as you move forward, there'll have to be some decision making in terms of narrowing down, you know, is it going to be, you know, will you have an underground garage or not, for example? Will it be a net zero building with geothermal heating and cooling perhaps? So there's really no action with this, just a matter of, you know, if you have any questions. But some things like photovoltaic, which I know is an ad alternate one of the 7. You know, in the design process, you might say, well, we're not sure yet, we don't have any commitment of that, but we want to install the electrical panel and the conduit up to the roof that's large enough to accommodate it if it's added, you know, as part of the project or 5 years from now. So that was the only reason for putting this on here. It's just a you know, discussion, and you know, with Paul's input, we'll be able, as we move forward with the design team, to give you more information and have them really guide you in that decision making as to what the committee wants in the program.
And I'm sorry, just to echo a little bit more on the staff component of things. It's gonna be very important for the community and this committee to help decide what kind of building do we wanna actually build here. And there may be members of the community that are very excited about green energy, that are very excited about underground parking, and that are willing to support those sorts of opportunities here. But we're gonna hit milestones along the project that are gonna cap those things off and we can't go forward with them. So we need to know what those are, we need to engage the public at a point in time when they can have input to that process in a timely manner so that it can help inform those decisions along the way.
And I think as the schedule gets tighter and as you review the budget, I think we'll get a clear idea of that, where we stand in terms of, adding those features. But again, we need to take this step by step, we just don't know yet. And I think it's imperative that we get the base funding for the building assured before we, these are called add-ons for a reason. We need to get our base funding completed.
I would suggest that as part of your RFQ process, you would want to put that on as an agenda item. You can always back it off, but to have a design team that has that expertise, whatever it is, whether it's an underground parking structure or the PV for the roof, knowing that they have the ability should be part of your criteria up front.
Okay, so
And
add all the
If I could add to that, the team makeup can change some, because for a net zero energy facility, a lot of emphasis goes to the mechanical design, because that's where most of the effort goes into the electrical and the mechanical. So you may be looking at an architect who's going to give you design, aesthetic, things like that. They're going to be relying on the mechanical and electrical, but mostly the mechanical engineers for a net zero energy process. And not every mechanical engineer is really adept at that. We're doing a couple projects like that right now, and they become more of a player in the project, more than the traditional architectural design process. So it's an important thing when you go up for an RFP for them to understand that could be what you're going to be wanting in the project. And it also has a cost component too. It doesn't, life cycle should zip out and pay for it, but there still is the initial cost.
So it's a vital component of the RFQ then?
It's pretty important.
Yeah.
If you're gonna go to net zero energy, it's an important piece. And not everybody has that skill and experience.
Yeah, there are a number of firms that are greenwashing these days, where they advertise their ability to design a green building, but have they actually gone through the process and proven that it is more efficient building? And when it comes to like LEED, which is a national organization, you can pay the money to hire a specialty consultant to submit it to the National Green Building Council, or you can just mirror the steps. So you design a building to the same criteria, you don't jump through the bureaucratic hoops to actually have it certified. So there's a policy decision you can make there as well.
Rick, you have your hand up?
Yeah, so I don't have any expertise in construction, architecture, or management of either of the above, which I know a lot of people here do. But I do have a lot of experience with what motivates people. And I think that people in this town, and certainly some people in this town, are very highly motivated by the idea of being innovative on one hand, since we have built Silicon Valley from many executives who live in this town, and we have identified new solutions, and the whole issue of energy uses is a huge solution that people are struggling with, and how to be innovative in that area. And Atherton has very large homes that consume a lot of energy, and there are opportunities for savings. And I think that if we emphasize the sustainable quality of this campus, that will do two things. It will energize people because they will get excited about the innovative nature of what we're building, and I think it would be the first zero net energy civic center in California. I know that West Berkeley Library is zero net energy, but I'm not aware of another public building yet built probably one will be built before we finish, but I don't know about a civic center. And secondly, some of those people are people that have earned lots of money in their lives through the companies that they built, and they would throw some of that money in to support this. So I feel very committed to that, and the reason I think it's particularly timely is I want to create a mechanism to enable people who are interested in contributing some of their expertise and experience. I know, for example, Ross Coningston built that incredibly innovative house on Selby Lane where he put in more sensors probably than he has used at the Google campus where he works. And he measures absolutely everything ad nauseum, but he knows what works and what doesn't work, and I'd love to get his contribution early. It could be helpful in the RFP development process, and I know there's other people in the town who are very knowledgeable, so I think we need a mechanism to help pull in and energize people. And you know, we went out last October, November, and we've been in a very serious study effort since, but it's been quiet.
Mhm.
And I think it's important that we open that up as the committee and encourage people to get involved. So this is one of those places. There's probably some other places, but this is one of those places which I think people could get excited about. And we really do have some really wonderful expertise in the town.
So, can I just make a comment on that? So I agree with you that that is the overriding goal, that would add a lot more cost to the base building. And so then what you were saying about what we need to do just to ensure that if those costs could be funded, we have to have the expertise with the mechanical engineers on board. And they would be experienced in that type of, new green technology. But if we don't use that green technology because we can't afford it, they are still expert enough to do just the basics, right? I mean, it's not that they would be so highly specialized that they couldn't do just the basics also. And I know that fundraising it has different levels and tiers, but I think the overarching goal would be to be able to pay for a net zero building. It's just that we got to reach our first plateau first, and then go on from there. So.
It may be a bit of a misnomer that it's going to cost you a lot more money to do that. The West Berkeley Library that he's referring to is not a big ticket item. It was just the innovation of the design team that got it there.
Well, some of the numbers that were provided us, initially indicated that it was, so we just
need to be careful. I mean, I
Yes.
think we all want this project to go ahead
Mhm.
in a base form at
Right.
least.
Yes,
And everything else that comes afterwards would be great.
exactly.
You know.
But I do agree with Vice Mayor that the innovative quality could excite
Yes.
a great deal of people, and instead of them saying, oh, they're just gonna build another brick and mortar civic center, and it's just gonna be the same old, same
It
old.
could really energize things.
Yeah.
Well, it's not gonna be it's always going to be LEED, in fact, we can't get away from that anymore in California, so it's LEED no matter what. I mean, it depends on what level we want to carry it to. So, that depends on funding,
Yeah.
I think. So, it will be LEED.
Lead in fact, because there's a difference. The California Green Building Code is very parallel to LEED standards.
Right.
But the California Code has a slightly different take on all of those green initiatives. Whereas if you want a LEED project, you're paying money to submit it to the federal level and having it registered and
Right.
certified.
So we have to decide that too.
Yeah.
Right.
We have to decide that, LEED in fact or LEED.
But,
So those are all these good questions.
yeah, there's a California code, I forget what it is, 32 or something, that has set up that all residential buildings have to be zero net energy by 2020 and commercial buildings by 2030. So I don't know how a relationship of that is to LEED. It doesn't sound like it's closely tied. the conference I went to for public and commercial buildings that were zero net energy, the people that presented the cost difference wasn't very much, and I was very surprised. So all I'm saying is that we need an opportunity to get our residents involved.
And how would that work, city manager? I mean, with aside from them joining the committee, we'd have ad hoc committee or task forces or.
You mean to have residents engaged in that conversation? They could come here directly, or, I mean, you've got a subcommittee that's already got a name to it, I forget which one it is.
The outreach,
No, well, the outreach one might be a good component of that, to gather the feedback.
No, I think
There was one that was looking at the
words in your
building.
mouth.
Well, I think we need a sustainable project committee. I mean, we do have the project management committee, but I think that's somewhat different.
Yeah,
But if my understanding is on an ad hoc committee, you can have more than committee members, you can have residents.
Well, that's, okay, that's, and we would.
they're just providing input into the process and feedback and participation. But it would be not a quorum of this group, less than a quorum, but it would just.
Well, that depends on the complexities of who do we choose, how many, and, so it's a big, it's a big next step too.
Come on.
So, I
Part of
don't think
this-
there's enough of us here to.
This is a rolled-up schedule, there's a lot of detail that's buried in behind this. And we've plugged in some dates during the programming effort to have a sustainability-specific meeting. And then once you get into the schematic design of the project, follow up and talk more about it. So you can have that outreach, get them psyched up about it, get the possibilities on the table, and then allow your design team to come back with some options for you, so that the community can see the progress from, here's the idea, and here's how we might implement it in the building.
Where would that be, and around what
dates
time?
and-
You can see down on line 36, programming. There's a little over a month there of time, and if you were to roll that out, there's a number of meetings where we're checking on the programming and validating that. And we've also plugged in some meetings that have community or your input on the sustainability amenities of the project. And then again, item 46, the schematic design. There's a couple of months worth of time where the design team is coming up with very alternatives for the design of the building, how they're going to look and how they're going to be massed, that we'll have a chance to address that specifically.
If you'll notice, the numbers jump from task line 46 to line 61, so that's why Paul said there's a lot of, every one of those numbers is actually filled in, not shown on this. And when we discussed it, Paul has incorporated those, and that's another feature that the committee would be asked to comment on during the RFP preparation, because what we learned in working with HMC, the only area that we significantly changed in terms of their scope was the process of going out to the community and soliciting feedback and having them reiterate, and it got a little bit more involved than they had anticipated.